Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Get your mind so deep with a lesson in history. There's people fighting for their communities. Don't say your struggle does not involve you. If you're from the working class, it's your struggle too.
This week, MPs voted to support the trade union bill, which will make it tougher to hold a strike. Unions, for example, will need higher turnout and more notice to make a strike ballot legal, and there are other restrictions too. Francis O'Grady, General Secretary of the TUC, said that the bill represents the biggest attack on trade unions for 30 years. But the government says the bill is necessary to prevent endless threats of industrial action. Reading the columnist Leo McCluskey in The Spectator, the situation certainly does seem serious.
The unions are conducting a fresh assault on the working public. During August, London was subjected to a number of 24-hour strikes on the Underground, with the drivers' union ASLEF fulfilling its promise to impose a complete shutdown of the entire underground system.
McCluskey goes on to mention strike action at the National Gallery and the Probation Service, and threats of strike action at the Driver and Vehicle Licensing Agency and by the National Union of Teachers. He then turns to the numbers.
Things are getting worse, not better. Last year, the number of days lost to union stoppages was 788,000, treble that in 2012.
Well, is that true? It was true when McCluskey wrote it, but on Wednesday, the Office for National Statistics released its latest data. The number of days lost to strikes in the last 12 months has fallen by more than half, to just 303,000. The thing is, these numbers, like many numbers, go up and down. If you compare 2014 to 2012, as McCluskey does, industrial action looks like it is dramatically rising. But if you compare 2014 to 2011, industrial action looks like it is dramatically falling. A cautionary note with these numbers is that they don't measure the impact of the strike. A strike at a private company might not have much impact at all. The company's profits will suffer, but customers could always shop elsewhere. But even a short strike on, say, the London Underground or by air traffic controllers could cause a lot of wider disruption. Still, these are the numbers we have, so let's take a look at them. The average number of days lost to strikes over the past 10 years, that's about 650,000 days a year. During the 1980s, that number occasionally topped 30 million days a year, and it averaged 8.5 million. That is more than 10 times recent levels. In the 1970s, the number averaged nearly 12 million days a year lost to strikes, which is nearly 20 times recent levels. And just to really put things into perspective, in 1926, the country lost over 160 million working days to strikes. Some people will look at those numbers and say that modernising legislation has helped us make progress in industrial relations and that the government should continue with a positive trend. Other people will look at those numbers and say that union bashing is pointless, kicking a man when he's down. But my bet is that most people won't look at those numbers at all.
Later today, the streets of Manchester will be thronged with thousands of trade union supporters marching against austerity and new laws which the unions say are a fundamental attack on the right to strike. Len McCluskey, leader of Unite, is probably Britain's most prominent trade union leader, and he will be on the march, and he joins me now. Good morning to you, Len McCluskey.
Morning, Andrew.
Can I ask, you've written a letter to the Prime Minister. This trade union bill is at the heart of a lot of your concerns, offering a kind of compromise deal with him. What does it say?
Well, it's a solution to one of the major problems that the Prime Minister has raised. He's indicated that he's concerned about the turnout in industrial action ballots, and so are we. And so what I've said to the Prime Minister, why don't you meet us in order to talk about new methods, modern methods of balloting, digital, online, but most importantly, secure secret workplace ballots. If he was prepared to do that, then Unite, for its part, wouldn't have any difficulty agreeing thresholds and indeed time limits for ballots. So it's a way of him extracting
so to be
a
clear,
very contentious issue.
If he gave you that aspect of modernisation, you would not oppose the 50% rule for you have to hit 50% of all ballots before there's a strike.
Thresholds.
And thresholds of 40% on essential services. You'd go for that as well.
Thresholds wouldn't be an issue if he'd allow us workplace balloting, secure workplace balloting, which we already have. So this divisive element that no other worker in the whole of Britain, of course, in the whole of Europe, has to abide by, would be removed. And there's also an issue I'd like the Prime Minister to consider. He ran part of his election on English votes for English laws. There's a likelihood here that it'll be English workers that are attacked by this trade union bill. The Scottish Parliament have said they're going to reject it, so have the Welsh Assembly and so have Stormont. So it's English workers, not only the worst protected in Europe, but the worst protected in the British Isles. That cannot be correct. You're going to meet the Prime Minister later, Andrew. Please put it to him.
Have you ever spoken to him?
Strangely, no. I mean, I know it is.
That is odd.
It is odd, because in the rest of Europe, leaders would engage with trade union leaders all the time.
Now, this legislation also has other things that you disapprove of. Armbands have to be worn by trade union officials during strikes and so forth, and there has to be a 2-week notice period before people put stuff up on Facebook and other social media. Now, the truth of the matter is the Tories have won a majority, and this legislation is therefore likely to go through. In the past, you've said that you would go beyond the law in opposing that. What does that actually mean?
Well, it actually means that there are occasions, and our history is littered with it, when bad laws are introduced, even by elected governments, then people have not only a right to oppose them, but a duty to stand up and defy them. That's why we've said repeatedly...
When you say beyond the law, what are you actually talking about?
It means that we will defend our members. This trade union bill, this trade union bill, which is deeply, deeply divisive, and there's all kinds of individuals, Police Federation, the HR professionals, the government's own regulatory body have said that it's not fit for purpose. There comes a time when you have to stand shoulder to shoulder with your membership. And if this law pushes our members outside of the law, what we in Unite will do is we won't abandon our members. If that pushes us outside of the law, then it will be the Prime Minister's responsibility for the outcomes of that.
Let me move on to what Len McCluskey was saying. I don't know if you saw it a little earlier on. He's written you a letter saying if you're prepared to work with the unions to allow more secure electronic balloting at the workplace, in return, they will accept the 40% and the 50% thresholds in your trade union bill. To a lot of people, that will seem like quite a good deal.
Well, I thought what was interesting about the interview is the trade unions accepting that these thresholds are right, that you shouldn't have damaging strikes that close schools or shut hospitals or stop underground systems working. You shouldn't have those things without a proper turnout of voters.
So what's the problem with modern electronic voting?
The Speaker of the House of Commons did actually put together a commission to look at electronic voting, and the conclusion of that commission was that it wasn't safe from fraud. So I think there are problems with that approach. And frankly,
are you prepared to talk to Len McCluskey about this?
Always. Look, the TUC.
You've never met him.
The TUC do come into my office from time to time, and I've had meetings with them. So always happy to talk to people.
Here is Britain's most influential trade unionist, and the two of you have never met. It's a bit odd, isn't it?
As I say, I met the TUC have been into my office, so they can they can bring who they like, frankly. But the point I'd make is it really too much to ask someone who's going to go on strike, who's going to disrupt people's children's school, to fill in a ballot paper to do that?
Certainly not. But
the thresholds are right, and they've now conceded the thresholds.
What about making everybody wear an armband and making them give 2 weeks' notice to the government of everything they're going to say on Facebook and social media? That seems a little bit, if I may say so, vindictive.
Well, all these measures in the legislation can be discussed as they go through Parliament. The heart of the legislation is thresholds, so that you can't have strikes that are based on a ballot, sometimes years before the actual strike takes place, based on very low turnouts. That's the heart of the bill. That's what's being proposed. A lot of the other stuff you read, frankly, is not actually in the bill.
United we stand, divided we fall. Everybody in the land, come together, one and all. Support your brother in his struggle for his rights.